When King Leopold III surrendered his beloved Belgian army to the Nazis in May of 1940, aristocrat and cavalry member Baron Jean de Selys-Longchamps fled his home country, searching for another military force so he could join the fight with the Allies. Finally settling in England, the Baron traded his horse for a Hawker Typhoon and was able to join the Royal Air Force after ingeniously forging his volunteer documents due to an age restriction. Determined, and with no previous flight experience, Selys-Longchamps proved a natural and quickly showed impressive dexterity while flying with the British forces, earning a reputation as one of the nation's most skillful pilots. Despite his success, however, the pilot was strangely haunted by, and single-mindedly obsessed with, an unusually obscure and luxurious building in Brussels. Selys-Longchamps repeatedly proposed multiple attacks on this building, right in the heart of the city, but his petition was constantly denied by his superiors, who deemed the risk too high. Yet on January 20th, 1943, the brave pilot decided to take the matter into his own hands and prepared to launch a daring strike under the utmost secrecy. It was a plan his superiors had directly forbidden, but he was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to strike at a dark Nazi secret and avenge the life of his father. The Baron. Born into Belgian nobility in May of 1912, Jean-Michel de Selys-Longchamps was the son of Baron Raymond Charles Michel Ghislain de Selys-Longchamps, with their family's noble roots dating back over a century. Despite growing up in Longchamp Castle as part of the country's aristocracy, Jean-Michel had a promising professional career as a bank clerk in the 1930s. It was this defiance to meet the status quo that eventually made Jean-Michel a national hero. At the outbreak of World War II, Selys-Longchamps was drafted into the Belgian army, where he was commissioned as a cavalry officer. Then, in May of 1940, Belgian King Leopold III surrendered his army to evade further bloodshed, thus surrendering the country to the Germans, who had been carrying out a vicious offensive campaign for 18 days. Refusing to accept the capitulation of his beloved country, Baron Jean-Michel decided to leave Belgium and traveled to the United Kingdom to join the Allied fight in any way he could. After serving for some time in Dunkirk, Selys-Longchamps escaped to France in hopes of joining a newly formed Belgian resistance. However, the armistice between Germany and France prevented him from doing so. When the Franco-German ceasefire finally ended, Jean-Michel tried to journey back to Britain through Morocco, traveling alongside a group of Belgian pilots. However, the team was caught by the Vichy French, and the Baron was incarcerated in Marseille as a prisoner of war. Selys-Longchamps persevered and eventually escaped back to England, where he immediately reported to the Royal Air Force to be trained as a fighter pilot. But as he was 28 and too old to be admitted into the program, Selys-Longchamps forged his entrance papers. During his training, the Belgian rebel quickly developed into an aggressive, able, and precise pilot. And from September of 1941 onward, he served with the 609th Squadron of the 11th Group, quickly earning a reputation as one of the best pilot officers of the Royal Air Force. The pilot. Selys-Longchamps kept up to date with the events of his country through his many Belgian contacts. It was one of these connections that informed him of the heartbreaking news that his father had lost his life after being imprisoned and tortured by the Sicherheitspolizei, or SIPO, a vicious German organization created by SS leader and Chief of German Police Heinrich Himmler. Going back to the beginning of the war, the SIPO and the German secret police had commandeered a luxurious Art Deco apartment building named Residence Belvedere and used it as their headquarters. Located at 453 Avenue Louise in Brussels, the once lavish building soon gained a sinister reputation, as its cellars were being used for tormenting prisoners. Then, motivated by the loss of his father, Selys-Longchamps came up with an ingenious plan to attack the SIPO and the secret police headquarters. Despite frequently asking his superiors for permission to carry out the plan, his requests were repeatedly ignored. It is believed that the Royal Air Force didn't approve the venture as it was too risky. As Selys-Longchamps grew more and more tired of asking for a green light, he decided to carry out the dangerous mission on his own, but waited for several weeks for the perfect time to go through with it. The opportunity to avenge his father and his country presented itself on Wednesday, January 20th, 1943, when the pilot was ordered to strike a railway junction near Ghent, a Belgian city only 35 miles away from Brussels. That morning, Selys-Longchamps armed his Hawker Typhoon single-seat fighter bomber to its limit and took a bag filled to the brim with Belgian flags that child refugees had made for him. Selys-Longchamps then used the approved mission as a jump-off point for his solo venture, and after completing a duel effort in the Ghent, strafing with wingman and comrade Flight Sergeant André Blanco, Selys-Longchamps told him to return to England by himself. The brave pilot then set course southeast for Brussels to perform a feat that had never been done before. The hero. To avoid being spotted by the enemy, the pilot entered the capital and traveled to Avenue des Nations, using the street as a low-level attack path for his Typhoon fighter. This path eventually led him to Avenue Louise, where he had an unobstructed and mostly frontal firing position of his coveted target, Residence Belvedere. The pilot's position was so precise, there was little risk of collateral damage. According to first-hand accounts, to draw German state police personnel to the unprotected windows of Residence Belvedere, the pilot made a high-speed pass prior to the attack. Once the people that took his father away from him were within viewing distance, Selys-Longchamps turned his 20mm Hispano autocannon to the building's windows. The pilot then ripped apart the building's Art Deco facade with a stream of cannon fire, sending countless pieces of concrete and glass into the air. Still, Selys-Longchamps was not done yet. After pulling away from the wrecked building, the pilot made his version of a victory lap around Brussels. Opening up his Typhoon's cockpit, he dropped thousands of little Belgian flags, as well as some Union Jacks across Brussels, the Royal Palace at Laeken, and other nearby villages. After dropping one more refugee-made flag in the garden of his niece, Baroness de Villegas de Saint-Pierre, the rebel pilot began his trek back to England. Still flying at the lowest level possible, his Typhoon was able to evade all German radars and anti-aircraft weaponry while making its way through the countryside, along the seashore and into the sea. In less than an hour, pilot Jean-Michel de Selys-Longchamps safely landed at his home base in Kent, England. In the end, the unauthorized attack resulted in several fatalities, including a high-ranking Gestapo officer, Commander Muller, and the chief of the Sicherheitsdienst intelligence agency, SS Sturmbannführer Alfred Thomas. Several other officers and workers in the building were also injured, some worse than others. While official German reports only admitted to 4 official fatalities, resistance sources put the toll as high as 30. Selys-Longchamps' attack had been so precise that no neighboring building sustained any substantial damage, and Residence Belvedere was so crippled that it took more than 6 weeks before it could be used again. The legend. Word soon spread among the righteous citizens, and the Belgians rejoiced at what they saw as retribution for the wrongful acts committed by their occupiers. The following day, hundreds of Brussels locals traveled to the wreck site to see the damage, but they were all pushed back by angry German soldiers who arrested many of the innocent denizens in retaliation. Still, the mere sight of shattered windows and bullet marks all over the devastated facade was enough to lift the spirits of an entire country. According to Herman Bodson, a member of the Belgian resistance during World War II, quote, "The day of the attack was a day of joy. That week, while the news was told around the country, was a week of joy." Wanting to know more about the mystery pilot that wrecked Gestapo building by himself, Belgians all over the occupied country secretly listened to a BBC broadcast that evening. The entire population and the ashamed Germans were all shocked to find out that the mystery pilot that single-handedly wreaked so much havoc on the Gestapo was none other than Jean de Selys-Longchamps, a member of the Belgian aristocracy. Upon his return to base, Selys-Longchamps received a warm welcome from his fellow pilots. Still, he was reprimanded for his actions by his superiors. As punishment for disobeying orders to fly off and play resistance fighter, Selys-Longchamps got demoted to pilot officer and was transferred to the No. 3 Squadron. Regardless, the British awarded him the Distinguished Flying Cross on May 31st, 4 months after his daring feat. The citation highlighted the pilot's exceptional ability, keenness, spirit, and courage to destroy the enemy whenever possible. Sadly, Selys-Longchamps didn't live long enough to enjoy his newfound fame. In the early hours of August 16, 1943, almost 8 months after his courageous feat, Selys-Longchamps was returning from a mission over Ostend in his beloved Belgium when his aircraft was severely damaged by German flak, and the pilot didn't survive. To this day, a bust of Baron Jean de Selys-Longchamps stands at 453 Avenue Louise in Brussels, and it was the citizens who erected it, to honor the heroic solo resistance pilot fighter that risked it all for his country. Thank you for watching Dark Skies. If you liked our video, please give us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more exciting historical content, subscribe to this and all the channels from our Dark Documentaries family. Stay tuned.